Right.
Hello, everyone. To introduce ourselves first, I'm Dagim Desta. I am an engineering and mathematics major, and I'm a rising sophomore.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jacob. I'm a psychology major, and I'm also a rising sophomore.
Hi, I'm Jackson Powell. I'm an engineering physics major, and I'm a rising senior.
Hello, I'm Nicholas Vasquez. I am an engineering physics major, and I am also a rising sophomore.
And we have been working with Dr. Sheng to investigate the efficacy of current machine learning techniques for the analysis of mouse ultrasonic vocalizations. But before we delve into the depth of what we actually did for this summer research, we'd first like to relay some of the general significance and the societal impacts of our research. Next slide, please.
With that being said, many neuropsychiatric diseases are associated with various types of communication and/or social deficits. An example of this is an individual with some kind of autism spectrum disorder, as they have complications that can be attributed to the aforementioned deficits. Crucial to the study of these disorders are mouse models. Mice are used as forums for experimentation of various human disease. The use of the ultrasonic vocalizations in the assessment of mouse models of human disease has risen very sharply in the last 5 to 10 years and is rapidly becoming a standard behavioral test for communication and social deficits. Lastly, when mice vocalize, whether it be a male vocalizing to a female or a mother to a child, it is presumably to communicate. These vocalizations are mostly in the ultrasonic range, and the ultrasonic range is 20 kilohertz to 200 kilohertz. And the highest a human can hear is 20 kilohertz. So the majority of these vocalizations are not audible to the average human. Next slide.
In order to tell which are caused and which are not, we used a thing called spectrogram, which is the image you see at the bottom, and that is the graph of the frequency in kilohertz versus time in milliseconds. And the black bar towards the bottom shows you the limit of human hearing, which is 20 kilohertz. And the brighter the color is on the spectrogram, the louder the sound is. And as you can see, the ultrasonic mouse vocalization is far beyond the range that humans can hear.
So one of the most demanding and arduous tasks in this analysis is separating out the ultrasonic calls from the background noise through a process referred to as segmentation. These noises can include scratches, squeaks on glass, and various other things. And in order to curtail this, researchers have written codes to try to make this differentiation easier. Currently, the gold standard for doing this is by eye. Our goal for this research is to address that issue and provide researchers with information regarding the true performance of the main machine learning algorithms for data segmentation when compared against the gold standard. And the gold standard in this case is the by eye method. This will then allow researchers to make informed decisions about the analysis software that they are going to do when they do their own interpersonal analysis. Next slide.
One of the machine learning programs we will be analyzing is called MUPET. MUPET is a MATLAB-based tool to analyze the ultrasonic calls emitted by mice. It offers researchers the possibility to rapidly analyze audio recordings in terms of acoustics, spectral information, and syllable statistics.
Another fully graphical MATLAB package is called DeepSqueak, and this is used for detecting and classifying rodent ultrasonic vocalizations and is engineered to allow non-experts easy access to USV detection and analysis.
And the third one is the golden standard, which is also known as the by eye method, and it is a code that can be used to easily scroll through the sound data and tell if the calls are there or not just by using our eyes.
So for this project, myself and Dagim worked together to increase the robustness of the sound data by reviewing previously by eye segmented data collected by Dr. Shank and her collaborators in the past. Myself and Dagim reviewed roughly 7 to 10 past directories each and uploaded our edited segments to Dropbox for Dr. Shank to manipulate using her comparison algorithm juxtaposed against the data extrapolated by the MUPET and DeepSqueak interfaces. While segmenting, we discovered that the difficulty lies within the segmentation itself, as it's very difficult to differentiate calls from background noise, as we mentioned earlier. And along with the segmentation, data manipulation of any sort when working with surpluses of data is very time-consuming and strenuous. Next slide.
I worked with Professor Shank to prepare the data to be processed and run it through the machine learning program MUPET. The data needed to be processed because it was a file type int16, Muppet can only process files of type WAV. Professor Shank already had a MATLAB code to convert the files, but it was a long process and took a few days to run all the files through the program. Since I had the faster computer and was already familiar with how to operate Muppet, I handled converting the files while Nick focused on understanding DeepSqueak. One of the complications was transferring the files to Nick. The size of the data was too large to send over email, so I ended up removing my external hard drive and taking it to his house in person. After that, I could focus on running data through Muppet. However, while running Muppet, I came across several errors in the code. Professor Shank and I spent a few days debugging it. I was using the most recent version of Muppet, and to my knowledge, these errors still persist. Keep that in mind if you plan on using this program. After correcting the errors, I finished running the data through Muppet and exported all the data to be analyzed.
Hello, my assignment for this research project was also to convert the files given to type WAV in order to run them through a program called DeepSqueak. After I transferred the files from Jackson's hard drive, I started running the files through the DeepSqueak algorithm, and I encountered a lack of code in two areas for the outcome we needed for this research. The first being that we needed to see how long it took the code to process each file to then be able to average up those times. The second issue was that when I exported the statistics of the call file, the file was in the wrong format, as it needed to be the main folder, the subfolder, and then the file name. After we fixed those problems, I was able to run the code and export the data with no issues. After running the data through Muppet and DeepSqueak, two of the outputs were the start times and the end times of the syllables detected by those algorithms. Using this and the start and end times we obtained from manually segmenting the data, we were able to write a code that gave a percentage of overlap of these times, thus showing us accurately the calls were identified. Here pictured is the gold standard in the orange box, which is by eye, and the Muppet and DeepSqueak is in green, and that is the codes that we ran through. And the blue box is the percentage of overlap, showing the difference between the two files, what is detected.
As you can see from the results, the percentage of accuracy is shockingly low for the two most widely used programs for this purpose. The highest degree of accuracy obtained from any of these codes, excluding the ones with no vocalizations in them, didn't even reach 70%. In a research environment, this is abysmal. Many neuroscientists wanting to segment their data without having to hire a legion of interns would download these codes and trust their results without a second thought. This could result in entire research projects being compromised and supporting false conclusions. This problem stems from a lack of understanding between those writing these codes and those using them.
Since we had no experience using either of the codes beforehand, we were able to objectively test their efficiency right out of the box. The people using these codes typically do not have coding experience, so they need to be highly they need to be highly operational and efficient when first downloaded without needing to change anything about the code or its settings. In that regard, Muppet already failed, being nearly unusable without us having to go into the code and correct several errors. Muppet's accuracy may have been noticeably better than DeepSqueak's, but considering that it required extensive knowledge of coding to even operate, it fails as a useful tool for non-coding literate neuroscientists to even use. In the future, programs like these should be developed by coders that are more knowledgeable of neuroscience, and neuroscientists should put more emphasis on learning the basics of coding.
For future research, we plan to verify and deeply analyze our results. We also want to try to tweak the codes to make them work for our data, and we'll try to use these algorithms to segment calls from other types of mice. After this, we'll write a paper regarding this research. Thank you for your time. We hope you enjoyed it.
Yes, and I would just like to go back and explain this figure. So the number of calls at the top is the gold standard versus DeepSqueak, so the by eye versus the code I ran it through. And it shows, gold standard minus DeepSqueak. So you can see some of the calls are below, and that is DeepSqueak having way more calls than what by eye, and vice versa for it being above. Then below that is the percent overlap between the two, which is what I showed you before in the analysis. And the 100% each one has an asterisk next to it because all of those 100% are, the gold standard says there's 0 files, and the code says there's 0 files. So not really a 100% truly regarding these codes. And the same can be said for the MuPet down below on the last two. All right.